All right, we're on the bonus topic again. If you're a Patreon supporter, thank you for supporting us. If you're watching this a week after, hey, that's okay. Just let a friend know. If you'd like to get these segments early, go ahead to go to patreon.com/around the lens and throw a buck at us. Really, you don't mind. You can throw change, dollar bills, just you can throw it at the screen. Literally, that's how we get your money. Throw
Just
the
throw,
money at the screen.
just throw it gently because you don't want to damage your screen.
Yeah, yeah, that's I don't I'm you know what? Don't throw it at the screen because you'll probably find me liable for it, and
Only,
then I'm gonna have to go to get sued
only,
or something.
only paper cash. Only paper cash at the screen. It's the slot.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway.
All right, so we had such a great first segment of the show. We were happy and jokey and stuff, and now let's bring it down. Let's get serious. Let's talk about something we all love to talk about: death. So, we spent a little bit of time talking about our archive and backing things up and stuff. What happens to our work after we die? And I was thinking about this because, of course, the big documentary, the Vivian Maier documentary has been in the news, not just for the fact that it was an awesome documentary, which I haven't seen yet, but I will, but because there was a whole big legal battle over who owns the photographs, who has the rights to the photographs, etc., etc. So, what I want to know from you guys is what do you want to happen with your work and, everything you've done after you die? Anybody?
I'll jump in.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so as a recovering attorney who once also did a little bit of probate work, one of the things that people do not do that everybody should do is have a will. And in this
I got a
case,
friend named Will. Is that good enough?
no. This will, the full name of this particular will is called Last Will and Testament, and I actually prescribe in my will what happens to my photographs upon my death and who owns ownership of that. And in some cases, I have specified particular nonprofits who I want to receive the ownership interest of my images so they can use it in promoting their particular conservation issue. Um, so photography, photo images is just one other version. It's one other version of property, and we all do a very poor job of identifying what should be done with our property after we die. And so photography should be treated just like that. You need to think of it in that way. And the more specific you are in your will, the less opportunity there is for a debate later as to who owns the rights and what can be done with your images. That's my approach.
But you ultimately want your work to continue living on in some form or fashion after you die,
Yeah,
to be seen and appreciated by others.
I think we all don't, won't we? Don't we
Yeah,
all want that?
I think we do. But again, what are you doing? Why are you doing your photography? Why are you sharing it with others? What do you want to accomplish as a photographer? With your images. Do you care about having any kind of a legacy? I mean, the interesting thing, I mentioned Ansel Adams in the main segment, and this was in the news recently because there was like, oh, the National Park Service is hiring a photographer to be this Ansel Adams photographer. The fine print was there's probably only 5 people in the United States that are qualified to apply for the job. But at the
Did you apply?
no, because I wasn't qualified. I'm not qualified to apply for that job. But Ansel Adams was working. He was working as an employee of the Department of the Interior when he captured some of his most iconic images. Those images belong to the National Park Service. But in his case, so he created a legacy and the ownership was already established. But, do I want my images to be used to help conservation images in the future? Absolutely, I do. And do I want to control who's going to use them and who's not going to use them? I care about that because I cared about making the images and I care about how they're going to be used. So, yeah, that is something I think about.
Andrew, you're a bit younger. What do you think about your legacy and your work?
Yeah, I mean, I think Carl said it pretty well. I don't have a written will for my photographs yet, but it's definitely something that we have to think about. And I think we all want our photographs to live on because we're all photographing for our own certain reasons. And, I hope when I die that someday people continue to look at my photographs. Or else, why am I making them?
Do you think a will is something you're going to start looking into before you go to, Africa, maybe?
Yeah, I mean,
Travel across the world to a
of course. We have to be, yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. I might write it, next week now.
All right, Zach, how about you, buddy?
Yeah, most certainly. I mean, it's one of those weird things I weirdly never even thought about. But obviously, yeah, I have a couple different nonprofits that, since most of my work is probably they'd be able to make use of it, that I probably should at least write a note or something like that. At least make it like publicly known. I mean, to some level, because otherwise, I don't know what would happen. They'd probably just go into storage somewhere and in an attic and on my hard drives, and then once my Zenfolio account gets next, in I think August runs out, I believe the images would probably be eventually deleted. I'm sure my Flickr account would live on forever. I'm sure Yahoo would figure out a way that they would own the photos, and same thing with Facebook as well. But yeah, no, I mean now I got to think about that. Great, thanks everybody. Great.
Yeah, let's think about death.
That's okay. Fuck it. No, sorry.
It's okay. It's a bonus segment. Yeah, I mean, it's like I was talking to a friend of mine, and I asked him because he's working as a photojournalist for newspapers and stuff like that. And of course, the reason he does that, and the reason he sells his work, or he gives his work to agencies to sell on his behalf, is because ultimately it'll live on beyond him. We take these photographs and they get owned by agencies, or not owned by, but they essentially live on because people will take and you may shoot something that's historically relevant 50, 60 years from now, 100 years from now, who knows. It could be in books, it could be on a documentary and stuff. And so to have that sort of immortality, if you will, through your work is something, yeah, I agree. We all want that in a sense. We want to live on because at the end of the day, all that's going to be left of us are a few photographs and a bunch of hard drives of our stuff. And I think what I was getting at, or what I think about, is kind of like after I go, is someone going to curate my work? Is there some way for people to find my work in an open space? And you bring up a good point, Zach, about how your Zenfolio account's going to run out and stuff like that. But how do I ensure that my legacy lives on? And I think, Carl, you've been a pretty good point about giving your work, or I guess donating your work to agencies that align with what you're doing. But how does I, of the normal guy, make sure my work is out there, or is my work even worth staying out there? I mean, is anything we're doing worth staying out there when there's obviously more stuff being created all the time?
Yeah.
How do we make sure that the best stuff is out there and being seen by people even after we go?
Well, there's an interesting. I just read. I forget where I read it, but there are 10 to 20 million people that are dead on Facebook right now.
That's crazy.
In 100 years, there's going to be like there's going to be like 1 billion dead.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's completely insane to think about, and all those people have. I forget what the averages are, but like every year, people upload at least 2,000-3,000 photos up to Facebook. Those accounts either just go away. I mean, like what happens if Facebook goes away? I mean, I know that we don't think that'll ever happen, but how many people are on MySpace?
That's true.
It reminds me, we gotta get that MySpace around the last page. Thanks for reminding me about that.
Exactly, yeah. But it's kind of scary to think, and as a person who, I mean, modern history right now, like if you're a historian that's going to college right now or getting your PhD right now, holy crap, it must be a nightmare. The idea because there's so much. There used to be like the 12 guys that were at that event, that saw the guy turn the water into wine. Those are the 12 guys that witnessed the thing happen. That was history. That's it. But now you have events that were seen by tens of thousands of people that have documented it in some way, shape, and form, and that information's out there. And now in photos, whether it be through their cell phone, whether it be through whatever, now that information's out there, and we have actually absolutely no plan to kind of bring that together. I mean, I know that the Library of Congress is kind of working on trying to figure out how to start building information on having the servers to just hold kind of important information data-wise that is on Facebook or on whatever. But I mean, we're talking about what's the next step above terabytes of information? I mean. So I mean, I think one of the Carl makes a very good point. I think one of the ways that as a photojournalist you can make sure that your photographs and your work has a future and has a place in history is by, unless you're a big enough photographer that you can set up a trust. Like, I'm sure that Enzel Adams' family has a trust that whatever the ownership of certain photos are, and same thing with like Bresson and all the, a lot of the big ones. But, for, some of us, maybe we won't make it, hopefully we'll make it that big, but, if we don't, I think that's actually a really good point. I mean, one of the best ways I think we can do it is just donate whatever the the work that I did. There's a organization called Defending Dissent. It's a nonprofit that covers, talks about protest movements and stuff like that. I'll probably end up, it's a nonprofit. I'll probably write a piece of paper at some point saying that if I should die, that's where my photos go, relevant to that cause. And same thing with Alaska Nature. There's, Cook Inlet Keeper. It'll probably have photos that would go to them, and and so on. So.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I mean, if there's a lot of different ways. If you want to donate to a specific organization, something that's close to your passion. I mean, one of the things I think of too is if I'm photographing stuff dealing with racial inequality. Covering that, one of the places I would donate to would be the Southern Poverty Law Center, or you might donate to if I went to a photojournalism, got a degree from the school, in photojournalism, I might donate it back to that school, to the photojournalism department. There's a lot of different ways to do it. The key thing is you have to think strategically. How are you going to do it? Is it going to be in a will? You got to name somebody. You got to be specific. If you have projects in specific, if you're a hard drive fetishist like Zach and you have projects in specific hard drives, then label them and then have that label correspond to the will, so that everything in that hard drive goes to so and so and everything in this hard drive goes to so and so. And just be specific, spell it out, go through all the proper steps, have a witness notarized, etc., and then have an original filed someplace that'll be safe. Whether it's your parents or sibling or somebody else.
Keep those archives organized.
Yes.
As hard as it is.
God, I feel so bad for whoever would be the job of my archivist or whatever. Oh God. There's so much Adderall would have to be involved in trying to reorganize all my files.
I mean, I think the donating thing is a great route for legacy's sake. But obviously, I have a son, and I'm sure Zach will have multiple children someday, right, Zach? But Carl, I don't know if you have any kids. Do you have any kids?
Nope, and no intention to.
His cats.
Andrew, you probably want to have kids, right? Someday.
Someday.
All right. Anyways, let's just talk about. Let's say we have theoretical families here. We want to make sure that they can maybe make a profit off of our film. Is it just a matter of, I guess, again, willing your stuff to them, or do you think there's ways to make money after you die with your work?
You said earlier, I'm not famous enough to have a trust, but trusts are really, really easy to set up. They're no more complicated than a will. And if you want to have your offspring involved in kind of controlling your legacy, you set up a trust and have them set up as the trustor in the document. And if you die before you reach the age of majority, and then you have somebody else, designated as a temporary trustor until they become of age, but you still spell out in that document what you want done with your photos, and they will then be in charge of managing them for you and taking care of them and kind of fulfilling your legacy. And maybe if, let's say if I become, if I were to have kids and I become some, world famous photographer and I'm making millions, then I can set up the document so that they can use my photos as income, a source of income. So it's a legacy for them financially, passing, again, like we always have used traditionally property. We pass property on to our offspring so that it'll help them, financially, that they won't be, left out in the cold and all that. And we can use our images the same way. If there's value to them financially, then we pass it on to them, and they are able to control it and use it for income as well.
I wonder how long like a trust lasts. I mean, obviously, because your copyright is going to end on your photographs at some point after you die, but obviously that's not going to be for a long time. So your children, theoretically, could use it for the majority of their life. But does a trust protect copyright, or what does a trust do that isn't like inherent in a will?
Well, a trust gives somebody the power to handle your property, or to handle finances, or to do something. Basically, it gives them control over finances, assets, property. So in this case, I would think setting up a trust to give them the power to enter into contracts and to obtain, to give out licensing rights and whatever to derive income from the photography, from the images.
So if I just will my work to my son, that's not good enough?
Yeah, because if he's, now we're getting into stuff that I wouldn't want to advise on specifically. I'm speaking more.
I'm not a lawyer, but
we should probably add that we recommend that you talk to your lawyer or whatever. Yeah. Do not rely on
the Lens does not sponsor any of this legal advice. It's not a law firm. Or they say on legal Zoom.
These are different tools that are available. How they all work and interact is definitely something you need to go to a lawyer for.
Right.
Yeah, because everybody's going to have their own specialized needs or interests.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I just want to make sure, I want all my photographs to be printed or at least displayed on the sides of buildings in New York City after I die, permanently, just all the time. So.
Put that in your will would be such a dick move to your kids.
Yeah, that's
like, this is a will. You're like, I am leaving $5,000 aside in my will that all my photos. You could do a whole. Everyone here has seen Brewster's Millions, right?
No.
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding? Oh my god.
Once or twice.
We're gonna break, and then everybody go see Brewster Millions. I don't know how you can find it now, but so he.
I think I've seen it when I was a kid. I don't know.
You should watch it. It's an excellent film. But basically, an old white guy leaves a black guy. I think it's his son technically in the will, or whatever, cousin or nephew or something like that. He has to do certain things to get the whole inheritance. So that to me would be the thing. Like, to get the whole inheritance, you must get my photos published in National Geographic. Yeah. So
no, go back to the whole getting them on building things, and you have to have images from your collection plastered on the sides of anything that has the word Trump on it. So any Trump towers, anything like that specifically, and unless you're able to accomplish that, you don't get the inheritance. That's it. Yeah.
My kids are screwed.
Otherwise the money gets donated directly to the national park system or something. Yeah.
There you go.
Actually, that would be good. So I don't know. I would hope that your kids wouldn't succeed. The national park system's like dead broke right now, so we're pretty scared.
Well, now that the superintendent is authorizing, commercial advertising, packaging of the names of things, that's just,
Yeah, I think I would try and cull together, like, obviously the best of my collection and, try to, like, give it like have an agency control the sale of it. So if there is anybody who wants anything and is going to make any money off of it, it's going to go to my family. But I don't think my work necessarily has the kind of cachet that anybody would make any money off of. So in the end, I think my collection will just sit in a box in an attic to be discovered by my son at some point, or my eventual children, whoever, and they'll just look at it and be like, "Oh, wow, Dad was a photographer." It'll just be like, your legacy, or my father, he had a camera, and his photographs sat in a shoebox up in the attic, and I looked at the photographs and I was like, "Oh, wow, he took photographs. That's neat." That's about it.
The big problem is think about just in the past 5 years, though. I mean, this is something that I actually do worry about, is that in 5 years, so if I just disappear and all my hard drives are sitting around in an attic or put away, and so in 5-10 years, how in the hell, if my connections aren't there, does someone even read these files? How does someone take this? What if when USB 2.0 goes away as just a thing? Or if this connection is bad, or or FireWire. Does anyone have a FireWire 800 cable sitting around? Just think about
somewhere
in 20 years, though. How would you even? We're gonna have to think. It's not like film where somebody can find a slide from Vivian Maier or whatever, or a negative from 100 years ago. I have a flatbed scanner with a negative scanner right here. I can do that. In 100 years. I have no idea. I don't know how my work is going to be able to be even read or found. Is the JPEG going to be a format? Is TIFF still going to be around?
Who knows? Seriously, who knows?
RAW will be on forever.
GIF was a file format 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, that was really, really prevalent. It disappeared, and then it became a motion thing again. It became really popular. There's been tons and tons of form. What about JPEG 2000? Does anyone remember JPEG 2000?
I see it. Sometimes.
I mean, can you upload that?
I don't know.
This is an excellent point. I mean, I'm gonna hold right here. I've got. Speaking of legacies, this is a camera that came to me. It was my grandfather's, and this is back in the day when there was no such thing as a brand of camera. They weren't making Canons or Nikons, but it was who made the shutter, who made the aperture, who made the lens. It was a comprehensive thing. It wasn't just one camera. I can still buy film for this, and I can still shoot it. This was made in the 1920s. There's no way on earth is anybody going to be able to take my D800 today and shoot it in the 2100s in 90 years from now. They're not going to be able to do it. And Zach is talking about, you want to talk about death, the death of photographic archives. Yeah. Again, back to Ansel Adams, we still have his collection available because it was printed out. It was on negatives. They were in a medium that can be reproduced still today. And digital files, not so much. 90 years from now, 50 years from now.
Yeah.
I mean, look at what computers were in the 1970s. Just 40 years ago, we had computers that took up entire rooms, and now they're here. The stuff that used to fill entire rooms now can fit on this, and increasingly people are using more digital. They're not printing out paper. Increasingly, people are deleting images from their hard drives as a means of creating more. They're not going to go out and have a love affair with hard drives like Zach or other people. The average consumer is just going to delete the images. They're going to go through and delete them, or they might post them to Facebook and then delete them from the hard drive. So now the only version they have left is on Facebook.
Yeah.
So the photo album is virtually dead. In kind of the hard copy photo album. Yeah. Hardly anybody uses it anymore to preserve your vacation photos and things like that. So there's death of ourselves, but then there's also death of the actual images themselves and whether or not they can even be accessed or utilized beyond a certain point.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking about that, and you brought up a good point, Zach, about again your Zenfolio and it going away. I'm sure there has to be a way where if you really wanted to, I mean, because, people set up trusts like you were talking about, or, these legacy sort of accounts where they've got money in a savings account that creates interest. I'm sure there's a way you could set up where your account is just paid for automatically through some sort of like trust fund that constantly replenishes with interest, and then it could live on that way, perhaps.
But one of the problems with a lot of these services is that you miss 1 month, things are gone, a couple months or even 2 months, and the time that it would take, the legal switch over to happen, that they're gone. Obviously, I'm sure that I could figure out if I called up Zenfolio and had said, I want to give you $10,000 to make sure that my account goes on for the next 100 years. I'm sure that they would figure out a way to make that happen. But you know what? My bets are that Zenfolio does not last 100 years. I trust it as a company. It's a solid company. But think about any of the how is Sears doing right now? How is any of the large corporations from 100 years ago? Is it even owned? That's the other thing too. Is it even owned by the same people? Think how many times, how many scares. Back when I used to use Flickr as a kind of absolute backup, kind of like just JPEG, 1 meg uploads or whatever, so at least I can show people my photos. And how many times have we had big scares where Flickr might go under, or when it was bought by Yahoo? Yahoo is now going to be bought supposedly by, I'm trying to remember, it was Comcast or whoever. We're going to trust it. Or here we go, Getty. My whole archive is now kind of sort of shared. When I used to upload to Demotix, is now owned by VCG, is now owned by Visual China Group, and is Visual China Group in its current form going to upload? Oh, and by the way, they only took VCG only took half of my uploads. So half of my uploads at Demotix are gone, are just completely gone, as far as I know. I'm sure they exist on a server somewhere, but whether no one can purchase them. So, it's kind of stuff we have to completely own ourselves. And, someone wrote, I've been trying to Google it, someone wrote an article that basically if you want your photos seen in 100 years, you need to have physical prints of them, or else they don't exist. And I think that's 100% right. I've been really kind of crappy about printing my, top photos, and I think due to, the 8x10 prints are so cheap nowadays to get. You can get them for $1 or $2. I know Zenfolio, I think, charges me 59 cents or something like that through my service. So I think this conversation has terrified me to the level that I think that at least I'm going to print one physical photo from every single major story that I cover. And I'm sure I'll have a huge stack of photos, but you know what? At least something will survive then. I have photos of my grandfather from 1939. I can't imagine that, not my grandkids, maybe my adopted grandkids will want to have some photos of me or photos of things that existed. Wolves used to exist in Alaska 100 years ago. We have photos of that thanks to Carl's prints. Otherwise, I don't know how anyone's going to know anything happened. You've seen files. Not to kind of continue on this, but the terrifying nature of digital thing. But have you ever seen the uploads when somebody downloads a YouTube video and then re-uploads it 100 times, and what happens to it? Same thing with the photo. It's kind of scary because you're downloading the digital package and you think it would be the same thing, but I've seen my JPEGs degrade over time, and they have pixelization all over them, and that's just from 10 years ago. A road trip, not even maybe half the photos, but a bunch of the photos I took from when I shot on my D70, a lot of JPEGs, they're unusable now. And that's 10 years.
Yeah.
I shot, it's not even Kodachrome, where at least I can hope and dream that maybe one day the film will be, I'll be able to do it again. I'm not kidding.
But, it's funny, you mentioned that, whether or not a USB port on your hard drive will still be readable, and maybe remind me about the fact that my dad left, his old Atari computer, and just a whole like library of 5.25-inch floppies,
Yeah.
and I have no way to read those anymore because I don't have a floppy reader. So that data is basically gone. Whatever he had on those is gone. And but you know, the same thing with film. I mean, you talk about, oh well, film is timeless and stuff, but the amount of people who have that craft and that skill, I think, you know, they're fewer and far between. You know, it's more of a specialized thing. You know, we're not going to have, I think, a 24-hour photo mat, you know, in every pharmacy. I think in like, I don't know, 10, 15 years or 20 years. I mean, if it, whenever it becomes, I think there's still a lot of
not 24 hours, but I shot an entire documentary on mini DV. That was 5 years ago.
Right.
And the only way that I can buy something that digitizes that, makes that be able to be seen. It's not even like I have a bunch of 16mm film sitting over there that I can at least hold up to light and see what is on it if I wanted to, and move it really quickly and get an idea of what the motion is. But I have 100 to 200 hours of a documentary that I shot. Carl knows about it, about Alaska, and I had 2 consecutive mini DV cameras break, and now I do not currently own a way to digitize that video, and it's sitting in a box over in my attic, and if my attic catches fire, it's done. It's gone. That it never existed. 2 years of my life is gone, and that was 5 years ago. You know,
well,
and that's,
you can find a company though that'll have the equipment.
I mean, I can buy another camera. They don't make them any. I mean, as far as I can tell, they don't make mini DV cameras anymore. So everything I'm working on is used. I'm just saying, in 5 years, it's a slow ending cycle of gear that exists anymore. I mean, I have, you know how many Betamax tapes I have? I have the original Star Wars on Betamax. I don't know. I would love to digitize it because it's the pre-George Lucas screwery versions, the original ones that were seen on screen. So they're quite valuable in that way. But I don't think I have a Betamax player anymore, and I don't necessarily know if I have a way to digitize, even if I did. So,
well, if you come back to Anchorage, I know a couple here in town that could probably.
No, there is a great place in Anchorage that does this stuff. Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, I think the biggest takeaway is have a plan.
Have a plan.
Don't just
freak
don't just
out.
Die. Don't just have your stuff sitting in a hard drive in an attic in a shelf, because that's where it's gonna sit unless you have a plan. And if nothing else, at least give your stuff to somebody who might be able to use it, and you'll be lucky, and your legacy will live on. But that's pretty much it for the bonus topic. Again, I want to thank our panelists for sticking around.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, thank you for being here. And if there's anything else, again, you guys are always welcome back. So, again, for Zach Roberts, for Andrew Renison, and for Carl Johnson, this is David Murphy, and this is the bonus topic, and we're out.